Hi everyone, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may be tuning in from. Welcome to our open source AI panel, coming in from Las Vegas, CES 2025. My name is Baris Ser. I lead Deloitte Consulting's AI practice for telecom, media, entertainment, and technology industry. With my fellow panelists here, we're going to talk about the present and future of open source in AI and it's how changing the evolution of AI technologies, and we're going to talk about how enterprises should consider adopting open source as part of their technology stack, opportunities and challenges associated with that. I'm here with my esteemed guests, Ajay Mungara from Intel and Sai Chowdhury from Meta, the two tech giants known for their notable contributions to the open source community. Let's do a quick introduction, maybe Ajay starting with you first. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, I'm Ajay Mungara. I work for Intel Corporation on the data center and AI side. I'm responsible for building the developer ecosystem around AI and our data center products.
Perfect. Sai?
My name is Sai Chowdhury. I support all of our AI partnerships at Meta and look forward to the panel.
Awesome. Well, excellent. Let's dive right in. I want to start with the basics first. Let's demystify open source in the context of AI. So Ajay, maybe starting with you, can you tell us a little bit about what open source means in the context of AI? You know, what are some of the tools and technologies associated with that and some of the key attributes?
I've been associated with open source for a very long time. It started pretty simple, like you just give the source code and make it available openly for people to contribute, and it's open source. But with AI, things have completely evolved, where you're talking about data, you're talking about frameworks, the architecture, you're talking about the models, everything and how they come together through microservices, how they come together through use cases, how you build all of these things and what parts of it are open source, how it can be open. So there is a different evolution that we are starting to see with open source and AI, and it's really exciting times because we are starting to see like a whole bunch of contributions that are coming across. So till the principles, the core principles of open source are still true, of transparency, of making sure that there is a community contribution, there is a community involvement with open source. That continues to happen, but we are starting to see interesting dynamics with open source and AI.
And it's already widely adopted. You know, one of the wake-up calls for me, Sai, I'll turn to you on this one, was when Mark Zuckerberg talked about how Llama was downloaded 30 million times or more, and this was well over a year ago.
Yep.
I'm sure the interest continued unabated. Where are we now in that journey in terms of adoption?
The Llama is obviously a very, very popular model as it relates to open source. And as of just a month ago, we're at 650 million downloads. That's astounding.
Ooh, astounding.
And another interesting stat is that there's over 85,000 derivatives on Hugging Face alone. And if you look at that stat from a year ago, that's 5 times greater than where we ended 2023 versus 2024. So both the usage or the download and the usage of the model as well as the derivatives are just exploding.
Fascinating. And maybe now that we established the baseline, let's talk a little bit about the benefits of open source AI, because there are always closed source alternatives. Why open source?
Well, I think the most important thing is that as an enterprise or as a public sector entity, you want to own the model and you want to own the data. So let's take a look at 2 use cases. If you're actually running the model, it's with your proprietary data. You don't want to send that to a cloud. You want to either run that on your private instance or your on-prem system. It's your data running in your model. The only way you can do that is using open models like Llama. Another option is you actually take the model and fine-tune it. Well, now that you fine-tuned it with your data, you want to retain that model, and so you want to keep that for yourself for use only by yourself. And so both the real benefits of using your own data as well as fine-tuning your own model, these are really only lead you towards using open source models.
Ajay, is there anything you want to add to it?
I will tell you in the past decade that what we are seeing with AI would have not been possible without open source. Without seeing what we have seen with PyTorch, what we are seeing with TensorFlow, what we are seeing with Hugging Face, transformer libraries, any of these things, if it was not there, I would say the AI would be in a completely different place. If it was not for Llama, I don't think the Gen AI, with the type of the models that you're starting to see, customized to a specific data, would have not been possible. So I would argue that open source and AI are supporting each other, helping each other, and without each other, I don't think we would see the evolution of AI that we are seeing today.
I would agree with that. In my mind, one of the standout benefits of open source is that it can catalyze an entire industry. It's not just the fact that there's a tool that's good for some purpose, but making it openly available to everyone. You're inviting a whole community of developers to jump in and continue to develop. Now, like I said, both Meta and Intel contributed significantly and continue to do so in the open source space. In the context of your tools, PyTorch or the Llama series of models and Opia framework and others, can you guys talk a little bit about how open source is driving innovation in the AI space? Sai, maybe start with
open
you.
source is driving innovation at all layers of the AI space. I mean, if you think about one of the things that Mark has talked about, I'd like to reiterate is this actually, by opening up the models, it actually helps us as well. When we released Llama 2, there was a set of developers, and remember, many of these developers work at big companies like Deloitte and Intel, not just at Meta. There were developers that went and increased the context window. There were developers that went and showed how you can do post-training using smaller data sets. There were developers that quantized the model. All of these things are things that we, even Meta, learned from and actually incorporated into Llama 3. So it's a great example of how we're actually benefiting from open sourcing the model for use of the next generation of the models. Similarly, at the next layer of the stack down, the execution engines. We have PyTorch that works to train these models at scale. But a whole host of these really innovative inference engines have come out, including something like VLLM, to really tuned to work to make these models run more efficiently and at lower cost. So two great examples right there.
Yeah, that continuous feedback loop that you get from the marketplace actually contributes to the acceleration of innovation.
Absolutely.
Ajay, how about on your side?
So at the Intel, what we saw was that there is, like as Sai was talking about, every layer of the stack, when you're trying to build a complete AI solution, there is aspects of technology that you have to bring in, right? So there is the microservices layer, there is the VLLM, the inference scaling engine that you really need. You need like a framework that stitches all of these together, whether it is Llama Index or whether it is Haystack or whatever, right? You have to pull all of these together to a solution. And when you talk about generative AI as such, there is very popular use cases nowadays, which is retrieval augmentation generation, which is RAG, which also involves a lot of other things to come and participate to create a complete AI solution. You need a re-ranking algorithm. So you need a vectorization. So you need to take all your data and find a way to vectorize it. You need to find an embedding model that will help you to do this. And then finally, you're sending it to an LLM and getting an output, and you're organizing this output in a certain way. So for all of this to really happen, you need to pull all of this together. That's what we try to do with Opia, which is an open platform for enterprise AI, where we have like over 50 different companies have come together. We have like a lot of different contributions from the industry, including like Intel, AMD, like Hugging Face, Meta. Everybody's participating to figure out like how we stitch all of these things together to create a solution or a use case that the customer finally wants, right? So how do you bring every layer of this AI stack from model on, from embeddings to re-ranking to pull together to create like a simple use case like a digital chatbot, or you want to do content summarization, language translation, or like video to audio conversion. Any of these things are possible if all of these things come together. That's what we've been trying to do with Opia.
So entirely new stack is being built with so many different components, and with the transparency and collaboration that open source brings, it is a lot easier to come to the right answer and do it on a faster path. Which takes me to my next question. A lot of our clients are in the process of making a whole bunch of build versus buy decisions, technology stack decisions, et cetera, as they continue to build the exact stack that you were talking about. They have some questions and perceived risks and concerns about open source as well. Now, what I would like to do is I want to be that concerned client advocate to raise some objections. I would like for you guys to bring your most compelling counter arguments. So, challenge question number one. Open source may be more vulnerable to security issues because of its open nature.
You know, it's kind of interesting. It's actually, in some sense, quite the opposite. One of the things that we release as part of the Llama releases are additional models that are called Llama Guard. They either protect for malicious prompts or code, generating malicious code, etc. The most important part about that is that not only are we releasing those models, but then you as an enterprise can take that model and further fine-tune it on your policies. And so you can actually make it more secure for retail, or you can make it more secure for the energy industry, or you can make it for your exact use case. So whereas the closed models, you have literally one security shield.
One size fits all.
Here you can actually customize the Llama Guard models, whether the input is image or text, or someday in the future, speech, for your security mechanisms. And so ironically, you have more flexibility to make a more secure system.
Jay, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I think I kind of understand where this is coming from. I truly think that GitHub is in some ways a new garbage bin of code. There is a lot of code out there. There's a lot of different projects out there. And before you start picking up an open source project, you have to really understand the governance model behind it, like the community behind it. Like, do you have like a technical steering committee that is really watching for all of this? Is it truly transparent? Do you have all the code that is there? Do you are doing the necessary security best practices for it? So before you randomly start picking up an open source project, you'll have to do some research. You have to spend some time to understand what is this project, who is behind this. Is like if I'm going to run into a security patch, is there somebody going to give me that security patch? So many open source projects out there have the security governance built into it. They have that thing, they have the privacy policies that are built into it. Because of the open nature of it, you have many companies looking to watch out in their best interests to see that it is secure. And when I do a production deployment, I have a security patch coming in when something goes wrong in the future, right? So before you start, like my advice is before you start picking up any random open source project, understand what the deployment models for it, who is behind it, and what's the security structure behind it. And then I think you will be fine.
All right, so you're basically saying that you have to be choiceful, apply some common sense governance, and then you may be even more secure because it gives you the flexibility that closed source models won't give you. And kind of continuing on this theme, there's another argument that says, open source requires that we customize and maintain it. And in the absence of technical support that a lot of our clients got accustomed to working with enterprise software companies, would it be harder for us to work with open source in the long run from a maintainability perspective? I don't know, maybe let's start with you, Ajay.
I would say that if you take any open source code, and if you're not working towards upstreaming it, and you take that code and you make any customization, that means you own it. Okay? And you'll have to figure out a way to catch up with the open source. Is going to be so much of innovation is going to happen when you're going to get community contributions. You have to have a plan on am I going to keep up with it, or am I going to upstream this one so that I get the benefit of all the future changes. And then you'll have to make that decision, right? It's really important where at what point in time are you going to pick the open source project, and when you're going to deploy it, what's going to be your structure that you're trying to do this. What I've found is there is many good techniques that can be used in order to kind of take the best advantage of your customization while still taking advantage of what is there in the open source world and what it is. And to the contrary to some of the things that people believe that, there is no support, there is no this, there is no that. fact, open source projects are very well supported. There is like a passionate set of developers that are going to come in, and probably you're going to get a much quicker response than you would get on any of the proprietary models in many cases.
So, yeah, it's no longer a ticket for someone to
Someone.
resolve anymore. It's,
Right.
it's something that, like a passion project for.
Yeah,
a whole
matter of
bunch
fact, if
developers.
with closed models, you literally have only one company to go to. Where with an open model, you can go to a diaspora of choices. So, with each company having its own economic incentive to support the customer, right? So we have something called the Llama Early Access Program, LEAP. And where we have over 30 companies of our closest tech partners, including Intel and Deloitte, of course. And what this enables is for an enterprise to be able to know that the best performance on Intel Silicon is going to be on Intel Silicon for Llama because Intel has an economic incentive to make sure that it's working well. In the same way, they can go to Deloitte and actually get the most knowledgeable enterprise, or if you're a public sector entity, engagement because you have the best knowledge of how Llama works. You can use on-prem equipment from a different hardware provider. You can use cloud provider. You're not locked into one exact company. And if anything, Linux has shown that a wide variety of companies can come together and with their own economic incentives, really provide the best-in-class support versus a proprietary.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think probably like 95 to 96% of all web servers run on Linux. That's quite amazing.
Yep.
Well, great answers. Thank you. I'll definitely use some of these arguments in our client conversations. Now I want to wrap with two rapid-fire predictions. Sai, let's start with you.
Sure.
How do you see open source AI evolving over the next 18 to 24 months? And if you're expecting greater adoption, please explain why.
So I think one of the things is that the way the models are evolving so quickly that literally every 9 months we are getting step changes of efficiency. And what I mean by that is if you take a look, our Llama 3 models that are in the 8 billion parameter sizes are as capable as our Llama 2 models that were over 70 billion parameters. And why this is important is because then the inference costs go down quite a bit. And so as a enterprise or as a public sector entity, you can really scale and run these services that are based on generative AI without actually breaking the bank. And so this is going to be a big step change, not only in the maturity of moving from a POC, proof of concept, to a production, but also to do it in a economically sustainable way. So that's one real big trend that I see coming to next year. Secondly is really all about multimodal. And what we mean by that is really these models are evolving to have native capability to understand text, video, image, as well as speech, all at the one go. And so this multimodal understanding will allow the models to also then be able to respond in much more interesting and much more accurate and more factual ways. This is going to open up some really new use cases that product managers, I think, all around the world are going to love taking advantage of.
Yeah, 100%. Ajay, how about you?
I think 8 years ago when I started working on AI, to do a simple prototype, it used to take about 10 months to a year before we could even show the wow factor to the management and get them excited about AI. Today you can do it over a weekend. Thanks to open source, thanks to a lot of different things that's coming up. It's very, very quick and fast for somebody to do a prototype. What I see is how do you take that prototype, scale it, deploy it, and in fact we have worked closely with Deloitte to take that prototype which was done over a weekend, and it takes many months before you start to realize the actual benefit of that AI prototype, right? The promise that you say, 20% productivity increase, but fine, only if you deploy it to your enterprise at a level of 20,000 employees, start using it, adopting it, only then you see the benefit.
That last mile of production and adoption is the longest mile.
Longest mile. And that last mile requires you to work with the enterprise data that's locked in unstructured, structured ways. It's in some databases, it's in some proprietary tools, it's in like some SharePoint sites, it's everywhere, right? So how do you bring that last mile value is where I think there is going to be a huge opportunity for AI this year. And second thing that I also see is today we are only talking about generational aspect of it, right? Or generate content, I summarize content. So how do you take that and how do you translate that into actions? What are you going to do with it? And the actions are always happening through some enterprise tool. My factory has to, some quality control system has to trigger an alert so that I stop the line. So all of this means you have to integrate AI and agentic workflows and decision making into your existing tools, right? So there is a lot of work that comes from the model, a lot of work that comes with the AI, but what do you do with that output? You have to make a meaningful value into the enterprise that has to be driven based on what these models are trying to tell you or do things for you, right? And that's where I see that opportunity this year, where enterprises will start to question that, oh, I want to realize the economic value of what I'm trying to invest in AI. Show me the benefits, show me the value for my business. That's what I see will happen in the immediate future.
Right, and I guess tying this back to what Sai said, open source actually offers some of these economic benefits. And as our clients start scaling their AI projects, costs will come to the forefront. You don't worry about that too much when you're just doing a proof of tech. But at scale, that's going to be a key consideration. So, well, thanks, gentlemen. Really appreciate the great conversation. I certainly benefited a lot from it. It looks like the next 18 to 24 months will continue to be really exciting. So, brace yourselves. And thanks everyone for joining us. Hope you find the conversation beneficial.